Hello and welcome to Dread Gaming. I am Dread, and this is World of Warcraft. Today we're looking at Gurtogg Bloodboil. This guy has quite a few abilities that are fairly important to the raid, so everyone in the raid actually has to do something. Because of that, we're all going to be paying attention. First up, let's talk about the tanks. This fight typically takes 3 tanks. You can do it with 2, but it gets kind of tricky. The tanks are going to be doing some fairly important swapping because of abilities called Acidic Wound and Bewildering Strike. Acidic Wound inflicts nature damage and is also going to reduce armor by 500, and it stacks 60 times. So this is a huge debuff. So the tanks are going to be swapping specifically for that to kind of swap those stacks around. Gurtogg also casts Bewildering Strike. That does a huge amount of damage to one target, confuses them for 8 seconds. That means as soon as he casts Bewildering Strike, he is going to need to get tanked by one of the 2 off tanks. And we need to make sure that those 2 off tanks don't have too many stacks of Acidic Wound. Next up is the melee. Now, the melee is going to have a fun time because they just need to stand behind him. They don't have to do anything else. However, they can't go over the threat of the 3 tanks because Gurtogg does a couple of very nasty AoE cone abilities as a cleave towards the melee. These abilities are Arcing Smash and Fell Acid Breath. Both of them do a significant amount of damage, and you don't want to be tanking that with your raid. Ranged DPS and healers are going to be dancing back and forth. The reason ranged DPS and healers need to dance in groups of 5 is because of a spell called Bloodboil. Now, Bloodboil is going to afflict the 5 furthest tunes from Bloodboil, and it's going to give them a dot dealing 600 damage every 24 seconds. So, using 3 groups to do this, you're always going to have the Bloodboil dot on you. However, it's going to do less damage over time because you're not going to get as many stacks on you. So, that is phase 1. That's going to last about 1.5 minutes or 90 seconds. After phase 1, P2 starts up. That stands for phase 2. For phase 2, Gurtogg is going to cast Fell Rage on one raid member. This raid member is going to get a bunch of buffs, but Gurtogg is only going to focus them. He is not going to attack anyone else because everyone else in the raid will have the Insignificance debuff. The Insignificance buff is going to make it so that no raid members are actually generating any threat. Now, you're not losing threat, but you're not gaining any threat either. It is very important that the healers keep the Fell Raged target up. This is going to be very healer intensive. Gurtogg also gets a buff, and he deals 85% increased damage during that same time period. So it's very important to keep the Fell Rage target up. At the end of this phase, he is going to cast Fell Geyser on the Fell Rage target. So don't stand around the Fell Rage target. You're going to know exactly who it is because they're going to be about 3 times their normal size. Very easy to see. After this, we're just going to go back to phase 1 and repeat again. We're going to have the tanks tank Gurtogg away, make sure he's facing away from the raid. The melee is going to stand behind him, making sure that the melee does not go over the threat of the 3 tanks. The 3 tanks are going to continuously swap back and forth on who is main tanking, and then the ranged DPS and healers are going to dance back and forth in groups of 5. That way the stackable debuffs are spread throughout them, balancing the Bloodboil debuff. So as long as you perform all of those tasks for each of the individual groups, the tanks, melee, and ranged DPS and healers, it's going to be a fairly easy fight, and you're going to knock them down. That wraps it up for Bloodboil. Make sure to like and subscribe down below, leave a comment if you have any, and follow me over on Twitch. You'll see me streaming on Thursday and Sunday evenings at 7 Central Standard Time. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.